The windshield cracked as the truck skidded sideways, snow blasting like shards of glass across the frozen highway. Nathan slammed his boot against the brake, jaw tight, breath fogging the glass. Beside him, her manicured hands clutched the dashboard. The woman everyone knew as the untouchable CEO, Alexandra Hayes. But here, stranded in the storm, she wasn't a billionaire. She was just human. Her voice shook, raw with fear. "Promise me you won't leave me here." And Nathan, a single dad who had already lost too much in life, met her eyes through the flickering dashboard light. What he said next would change both of their lives forever. Before we dive in, drop a comment with where you're watching from, and don't forget to hit subscribe for more videos like this. Let's begin. The truck's engine coughed, then died, plunging them into a silence so thick it felt alive. Snow howled against the windows like 1,000 fists, burying the road in seconds. Nathan reached for the ignition again, but the key only clicked. A hollow, final sound. "Great," Alexandra muttered, her voice sharp with frustration, though her hands trembled against her lap. "Of all nights, of all roads, I had to be stuck here with you." Nathan shot her a look, his face shadowed under the dim glow of the failing dome light. "You think I wanted this? Roads are closed. Plows won't come till morning. You better hope my heater holds, or that coat of yours won't matter." Her coat, a white designer trench that screamed power and wealth, looked almost useless now. Her breath came in shallow clouds, her usual composure cracking. "Do something. Call someone." "I did." Nathan lifted his phone, showing her the screen. No signal, only a single bar that blinked and vanished. For the first time, the woman who ordered boardrooms into silence seemed small. Her lips parted as she whispered again, softer, like it wasn't for the world to hear. "Please, promise me you won't leave me here." Nathan leaned back, running a hand through his dark hair. He thought of his daughter waiting at home with his sister, the promise he'd made to always come back safe. But then he looked at Alexandra, the same woman who, hours earlier, had brushed past him at the gas station without so much as a glance. Now her eyes shone with something raw, fear. "I don't leave people behind," he said quietly, the weight of his past in every word. "Not anymore." Her shoulders eased, but only slightly. Then, almost as if trying to build back her armor, she scoffed, "You sound like some kind of soldier." He didn't answer. Not yet. Outside, the snow screamed louder, rattling the frame of the truck. The cold crept in through every seam, biting at their skin. Nathan unzipped his heavy flannel jacket and draped it across her lap. She blinked at him. "What are you doing?" "Keeping you alive," he said, simple and steady. "Whether you like it or not." Her eyes lingered on him, scanning the lines of his face as if she was searching for something she didn't want to admit. For the first time in her life, Alexandra Hayes, the CEO who commanded skyscrapers, was depending on a mechanic's single dad, stranded in the snow. And the storm outside was only just beginning. The temperature inside the truck dropped so fast, their breath looked like smoke. Alexandra rubbed her gloved hands together, eyes darting toward Nathan, who sat steady behind the wheel, staring into the whiteout like he could will the storm to break. "Why aren't you panicking?" she snapped, her voice cracking with the cold. "Most people would be." "I've seen worse." Nathan cut her off, his tone even but edged with something heavy. His gaze didn't shift from the swirling snow. "Panicking doesn't keep anyone warm." Her lips parted to fire back, but the look on his face silenced her. His eyes weren't empty, they were haunted. That quiet strength unsettled her more than the storm itself. Minutes dragged. The heater coughed, then sputtered out completely. The silence that followed felt like a death sentence. Alexandra's pulse spiked. She tugged her coat tighter, but the cold bit through like teeth. Nathan cursed under his breath, reached behind the seat, and pulled out an old army blanket. Faded, frayed, but thick. Without hesitation, he threw half of it over her shoulders. "I don't need your charity," she muttered, clutching it anyway. "It's not charity," he said flatly. "It's survival. Learn the difference." Her jaw tightened, but something inside her shifted. The boardroom queen, who had built walls higher than her own skyscraper, was sitting inches away from a man who didn't bow, didn't flatter, didn't fear her. He just was. And strangely, that steadiness was the only thing keeping her from unraveling. The truck rattled as wind slammed against it. Somewhere in the distance, a tree cracked and fell, echoing like thunder. Alexandra flinched, her polished nails digging into the worn leather seat. Nathan noticed. His voice dropped low, calm. "Hey, look at me." Her head turned reluctantly. "You're not alone?" he said. "Not tonight." Something in his words, so simple, so raw, pierced deeper than she expected. She hated it. She hated that she felt safer because of him. Hours crawled by. The world outside froze in silence. The temperature inside the cab dropped to bone-cutting levels. Alexandra's hands shook violently now, and when she tried to hide it, Nathan reached over and covered them with his own. His palms were rough, calloused from years of labor, but radiated heat like fire. She swallowed hard. "Why are you doing this?" "Because I know what it's like to watch someone freeze," he said. His voice cracked for the first time, like a splinter breaking off old wood. Her eyes widened. "You lost someone." Nathan's jaw clenched, a muscle twitching near his temple. He didn't answer, but that silence spoke louder than any words. Alexandra didn't push. Instead, for the first time in years, she whispered something she rarely let slip. "I'm scared." Nathan met her gaze, his dark eyes steady. "Good. Fear keeps you alive. But don't let it own you." The storm pressed harder, shaking the truck like a toy. A sudden blast of wind pried the driver's door open with a shriek. Snow poured inside, biting cold slamming into their faces. Nathan lunged, wrestling the door shut with his shoulder. His whole body shook with effort. Alexandra panicked. "We're not going to make it, are we?" Nathan slammed the lock down, chest heaving. "Not if you give up." Her throat tightened. She wanted to scream, to break, to curse him for being so calm while she felt like drowning in ice. Instead, her voice came out small, fragile. "I've spent my whole life controlling everything, my company, my people, my image. And now, none of that matters." Nathan's voice softened. "Out here, money's worthless. Titles don't mean a damn thing. Out here, it's just people." Her eyes flickered, glassy with tears she hadn't let herself cry in years. "And what about you, Nathan? Who are you out here?" His lips tightened, a shadow crossing his face. He hesitated, then leaned back in his seat, exhaling hard. "A father who promised his little girl he'd always come home. That's all I am." Alexandra stared at him. The words hit something deep inside her chest, a place she'd buried under power and pride. She thought of the boardrooms, the headlines, the cold glass office that looked down on the city. And for the first time, she wondered if she'd traded away her humanity to keep it all. She didn't realize her tears had slipped until Nathan reached up, brushing a single drop from her cheek with his thumb. The touch was gentle, almost reverent, and it shook her more than the storm. "Don't cry," he murmured. "Not yet. Save it for when we're safe." Her breath hitched, eyes locking with his. "And if we're not?" His reply came without hesitation. "Then I'll make sure you don't go alone." The words broke something inside her, something brittle, long starved of kindness. For years she had been surrounded by people who wanted her power, her money, her approval. But this man, a stranger with nothing to gain, was offering something no one else ever had. Himself. Outside, the storm finally began to ease, the howling wind softening into whispers. Dawn was still hours away, but a sliver of hope threaded through the frozen night. Inside that truck, two people from different worlds sat in silence, bound not by status, not by wealth, but by survival, by fear, and by the fragile warmth of a promise. And neither of them knew that this night would change everything. The storm quieted, but the silence it left behind was sharper than the wind. Snow coated the windshield in thick white sheets, turning the world outside into a frozen tomb. The truck creaked, metal groaning against the cold, and every breath Alexandra drew felt like inhaling glass. Nathan rubbed his hands together, blowing warm air against them before reaching over and pulling her closer under the blanket. She stiffened at first. Alexandra Hayes didn't lean on anyone, but her body betrayed her, shaking uncontrollably until she finally gave in, leaning against him. Her cheek pressed against his chest. Beneath the flannel, his heartbeat thudded steady, like a metronome against the chaos of her thoughts. For the first time in years, she wasn't in control, wasn't dictating terms, and terrifyingly, it felt safe. "You know," she whispered, voice brittle, "I've sat at the top of skyscrapers, staring down at the city, convinced nothing could touch me. Now look at me. Shaking in a truck, praying some stranger won't let me die here." Nathan's chin dipped, his breath brushing her hair. "You're not dying here. Not on my watch." Her lips trembled. "Why do you sound so sure?" His jaw tightened. He hesitated, then finally spoke words he'd kept locked away. "Because once, I wasn't fast enough. Once I let someone slip away. My wife. Car accident on a back road. Winter night just like this. I made it out. She didn't." Alexandra's breath caught. She looked up at him, his face shadowed but raw, stripped of all defenses. His confession cracked something in her chest. She had spent years hiding her own scars behind designer suits and flawless headlines. But here was a man, exposing his wounds without shame. "I'm sorry," she murmured, her hand brushing his arm instinctively. He shook his head. "Don't be. I can't change the past. But I swore I'd never let it happen again. If it costs me everything, I'll get you through this." The conviction in his voice made her chest ache. She realized in that moment, Nathan wasn't just strong. He was unbreakable in the ways that mattered most. Hours bled into dawn. Faint light spilled across the horizon, turning the snow into a silver ocean. But their relief was short-lived. Nathan spotted smoke rising from the truck's hood, the engine finally giving in to the cold. "We can't stay here," he said, tone clipped. "We'll freeze before help finds us." Panic flickered in Alexandra's eyes. "What are you saying?" "I'm saying we walk." He grabbed his gloves, tugging them on. "There's a ranger station about 4 miles east. I saw the sign before we hit the drift." 4 miles? Her voice cracked. "Through this?" "You'll make it," he said, gripping her shoulders, forcing her to meet his gaze. "Because I won't let you quit." Her throat tightened. She wanted to protest, to remind him she wasn't built for trudging through waist-deep snow. But something in his eyes made her nod instead. Bundled in the blanket, they stepped into the storm's aftermath. The snow crunched beneath their boots, bitter wind clawing at their skin. Every step was a battle. Alexandra stumbled often, but each time, Nathan's hand caught her before she fell. At one point, when her legs buckled and she gasped, "I can't," he lifted her, carrying her against his chest without hesitation. She buried her face in his coat, her pride long since stripped away. "You're stronger than you think," he said, his voice low but fierce. "You've just never had to prove it like this." His words ignited something inside her, a spark she didn't know she'd been missing. For once, Alexandra Hayes wasn't leading with power or fear. She was surviving with someone who saw her as more than a title. By the time the ranger station came into view, both of them were barely standing. Smoke curled from its chimney, a thin promise of warmth. Nathan half-dragged, half-carried her the final stretch, pounding on the wooden door until it creaked open. The ranger, a gray-haired man in his 50s, froze at the sight of them. "Lord above, you two look half dead. Get inside." Heat slammed into them as they crossed the threshold. Alexandra collapsed onto a bench near the fire, her whole body trembling violently. Nathan crouched in front of her, rubbing her arms until the color slowly returned to her cheeks. The ranger pressed mugs of steaming coffee into their hands. "Storm took out half the grid. You're lucky you made it here alive." Alexandra's eyes lifted, finding Nathan's across the rim of her cup. Lucky. That word burned. She knew luck had nothing to do with it. She was alive because of him. Later, wrapped in a blanket near the fire, Alexandra finally whispered what she'd been too proud to say all night. "You saved me." Nathan shook his head. "You saved yourself. I just kept you moving." Her lips curved into the faintest, almost disbelieving smile. "No one's ever talked to me like that. Like I'm human." His gaze softened, the firelight reflecting in his eyes. "Maybe because too many people see what you have instead of who you are." Her throat tightened again, but this time it wasn't fear. It was something heavier, deeper. For the first time in years, Alexandra Hayes wasn't a CEO. She wasn't untouchable. She was just a woman, alive because a single dad refused to give up on her. Days later, when roads cleared and her world of power and wealth came rushing back, Alexandra found herself changed. The woman who once commanded skyscrapers now carried a quiet truth no one else knew. In the dead of winter, stripped of everything, she'd been saved not by money, not by influence, but by the kindness of a man who had nothing to give except his strength. And when she left that ranger station, she carried his words with her like fire in her chest. "I don't leave people behind. Not anymore." That night in the snow hadn't just saved her life. It had reminded her what it meant to be alive.